Welcome to What the Health? The podcast where anything health is fair game. There's a lot of garbage advice and misinformation out there that can leave you feeling stumped and stuck. Together, let's sift through the sea of BS and find the best ways to get healthy and stay healthy. Join the team as we tackle the trends and bust the myths about health and wellness. Here are your hosts, Dr. Dan Turo, Angela Turo, and Dr. Riley Brown.
Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another What the Health podcast. What do you think? Should we get started?
Yeah, I guess.
We're still waking up after Snowmageddon over the last couple of days.
Yeah, the shoveling hangover.
You ever had a snowstorm like that out in Ohio?
I lived in North Dakota for my first 5 years of life.
This is nothing.
This is about on par.
Yeah. Yeah, this is probably the norm.
Yeah, I remember building igloos, and it was just like, I mean, obviously I was 4 or 5 at the time, but it was all the way up to the waist every winter. So,
jeez.
Yep.
Yeah, not the norm for us here, but so I hope you all were well stretched and warmed up before you did all the shoveling. So stay warm out there this week. But anyway, we are going to talk about the chiropractic continuum, the chiropractic care continuum. And we've brought this up before in a previous podcast, but the idea that a lot of people start chiropractic care based on a specific condition, right? They come in, they've got a headache, they've got neck pain, they've got tingling and numbness down their hand, they've got a back pain, sciatica, or they have indigestion or reflux. I mean, all things that we, are pretty successful with helping, little kids who have trouble walking or difficulty digesting or sleeping, all, conditions that people are coming in with, and they're trying to achieve a specific outcome or reduce a specific symptom. But then we talk about how a lot of times within a couple of adjustments, if you're younger and it hasn't been around that long, to within a couple of weeks, a lot of times those symptoms can really start to improve, sometimes even resolve after just a few short weeks. That's not, not the norm in every case, but it can really start to resolve very quickly. But then we talk about the idea of correction, because especially if you're, an adolescent, about to hit spinal maturity, or a young adult, and you've had a couple of injuries, whether it's car accidents or sports injuries. So we talk about the symptoms might resolve very quickly, but if we don't, continue through some corrective work, not just with adjustments, but also corrective exercises, right? We always joke with people, like, you can adjust them, but then if they go home and, sit in their chair with very poor posture, their heads down with their device, it's not going to help with the corrective work of the spine, just like with wearing braces. As you tighten the braces, those maintain and stay on there, after your appointments with the orthodontist. But with chiropractic, you have to do the adjustment, but then also make sure that you are, holding good posture and, treating your body well to be able to make the long-term spinal strengthening and correction. Yeah. So that's the corrective process. But then I think a big question becomes, well, what do I do once my spine has become corrected to the best of our ability? And sometimes we see 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, we still see improvements in the spine if they are continuing with checking in, and really their consistency care, right? And that's where, that's why we call it a continuum, right? Because it's really like a blend. It's not that we do anything, significantly different in each one, but sometimes it's the frequency of care, of checking in, and the corrective process then transitions very easily into a continuation process, a consistency of care. And that's where you're kind of beyond, symptoms. Your correction, your spine has been corrected to the best of its ability. And now you're checking in because you want to maintain, we don't like that word, right? We like the idea of, performance and elevating and wellness. and being part of that wellness journey. And, I think it's flipping the mindset, because so many people seem to be against, when it comes to chiropractic care, correct me if I'm wrong, but when it comes to chiropractic care, so many people seem to be like, well, why do I have to keep going for the rest of my life, right? But then, I look to so many other, professions or things in life that we do on a consistent basis. And I'm like, well, why is it okay for those other people to go and get oil in your car and fill up gas and, maybe
blood pressure medication.
Take a blood pressure medication. I see you already dove right into the medical side, which is where we were getting to. But yeah, like if you're diagnosed with high blood pressure and you're told to take a medication, what's the consistency of that?
It's daily. You're
right?
Taking it daily for, until it doesn't work, or you have to change the meds. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so that's good. So, the idea you have to change the meds. So what happens when you're on a medication long term?
Your body just kind of adapts to it and alters its, biochemistry to kind of either alter it or just get used to it, so to speak.
Yeah. And so like if you're not changing anything from a lifestyle perspective or trying to address the reason the high blood pressure is there, or the reflux, or, indigestion or constipation, or, why the headache is there, if you're not getting that underlying cause and source, then it becomes not just you have to be on one medication, but now, like you said, your body continues to try to adapt to it, right? So if the blood pressure is high because of, let's say, there's a neck subluxation or misalignment, or, you have chronic stress in your life from a job. I mean, I can remember a patient very, very clearly early on in practice had chronic migraines. He was a banker and he wore a necktie every day. His neck was completely reversed. And again, he was using chiropractic as kind of like an expensive aspirin, unfortunately, come in, get adjusted, the neck would feel good for a while, but he was so stressed out in his job. As soon as he left his job, migraines disappeared.
Wow.
And, again, now I'm not, condoning just dropping your job if it's your only source of income. Although we've had people who they've realized that their job is the source of their primary source of stress. And they're like, okay, well, either I continue down this path and continue putting my body in this distressful situation, or I make a change to go find something else that's going to be, more congruent with, my health and well-being. So going back to the medications and the adapting, right? Your body, if you're not getting to the underlying cause of why your body is stressed out and why you're having these symptoms, then your body will adapt to it. So if, let's just use high blood pressure for an example. If you go in and, you're told you have high blood pressure at 150/90, and they want to give you a blood pressure med to bring it down. Well, it might bring it down into a normal range, but over time, then your body adapts to that medication, but the source of stress and the source of high blood pressure might still be there. And so if you don't remove that, well, now the body's going to creep it back up to that 150/90 range with one medication. So now you go in, you see your primary care, and now they say, well, wait, your blood pressure's back up. And so the one medication is not keeping it down low enough. So now what do we have to do?
Add another, or
increase the dosage, or add a different medication to affect a different, level of why the blood pressure is high. And so you can see how very quickly one medication can lead to two. My toxicology teacher, did you have Dr. Kumar?
Yeah.
Toxicology? Yeah. He would always say, one medication leads to two leads to four leads to 8, and so on and so forth. And so then you get to that statistic, right? Where, people on, I think who's 65 and older are on an average of like 5 medications or more. And you're managing your health with medication rather than trying to work with your body and facilitate health and well-being. And so
it's the wrong consistency care.
There you go. So
it's consistent, but
it's just incongruent, right? It's incongruent with health, right? We talk about, we talk about health all the time. Even as an example, last night we were, my son was doing a homework assignment, and it was asking him, what is Medicare? Is one of the questions. He was going through like a paycheck, and he had to like calculate all the taxes and everything coming out of the paycheck. And so it was like, what is Medicare was one of the questions. And so of course I'm like, well, it's government sponsored healthcare insurance. And I'm like, and then I just kind of said, well, you don't have to call it health insurance. You could call it medical insurance. Yeah. And he actually, he was the one who said that, because he realized very quickly. And I asked him, like, well, why is that? He's like, well, because medicine isn't the same as health. And I said, bingo. And so he gets it at 14 only because he's grown up with that mindset. Whereas so many of us, and it's not our fault because we grow up in that culture of, well, if I'm sick, I take a medication and then the symptom goes away, and so now I'm healthy again. Yeah. And that's the hope, right? That the symptoms go away, and now I'm healthy again. But a lot of times, regardless of what you do, symptoms are self-resolving, right? Mm-hmm. So within a couple of weeks, and even a lot of chiropractors, talk about this, and even medical doctors talk about this. Regardless of what you do, if you have one patient and they've got a certain set of symptoms, whether they go to the medical doctor, the physical therapist, the chiropractor, the DO, like their symptoms are going to resolve in 2 weeks with whatever path they took, because the body is an amazing adapting, healing organism. Yeah. And so who are they going to give credit to then? Whoever they went to, right? So, but if you didn't get to the underlying cause of why those symptoms show up in the first place, and they may have gone away temporarily, but then if you don't correct the underlying source of the stress, then, a year, 2, 3 down the road, maybe not the same symptoms show up, but now other alarm signals start going off. And so that's where, you get something that, okay, maybe you had a neck pain or a headache, and that was self-resolving after, a few weeks. But now down the road, you have high blood pressure. And so now that blood pressure won't, they're trying to get it into a quote unquote normal range. And we talk about this all the time. You get that blood pressure into a normal range through medication, but then you continue to adapt. And so now your body continues to go down this stressful path with medication, but not getting to the underlying cause of why it's there. So the consistency care, right? So, I don't understand why, again, I wanted to kind of toss this out to you. Like, people, when they come in, it's like, well, they want the solution to be like one and done, right? Yeah. In fact, we even have a couple of patients, we joke, and it's like their nickname is one and done, because it's like, if their condition isn't resolved within, 1 or 2 adjustments, they're like almost upset that it's not resolved. But then we look at their spine, and it's like their spine has been damaged, and going down this path of degeneration for years, if not decades. Yeah. And it's like they want the solution to be, one and done, but with everything else in life, as we brought up, medication, let's bring up some healthy habits, right? Going to the gym. Yeah. You would never have someone come to, if someone who's 100 pounds overweight and went to a trainer and said, well, I want to lose this 100 pounds. It's like, okay, well,
that's one session's not
one session, 1 week, 1 month, maybe even 1 year is not necessarily going to going to clear it, right? It's a consistent, showing up of moving the body in an appropriate way and putting the right ingredients in the body through diet. It's going to help you get back to that healthy weight. And so it just, it kind of boggles my mind sometimes, where it's like, for chiropractic care, it's like, well, why do I have to keep going? Why do I have to keep going? But people are so in other areas, they're perfectly okay.
I think it's the stigma of, like, everybody says once you go to the chiropractor once, you have to always go. You have to go back and stuff. And it's like, it's not completely false in the aspect of consistency care. It's like you should want to go back to make sure, the condition and correction, care stays where it was. So I think the stigma on it, people kind of are almost a little bit pushy, like a little pushback on that, like, well, I don't want to fall into that pattern, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and, so I guess, Yeah, they don't want to fall into the pattern. And again, like the solution, they a lot of times people just, they want that, like, they want the solution so that they can get through that initial problem, and then they're like, okay, I'm good. And again, we see a lot of people that come in specifically for condition-based care, and they start to feel better after a handful of adjustments, and within a couple months, it's like, okay, well, I'll come back when I need you. Yeah. Meaning, and when I need you is the next time that symptom shows up.
Yeah.
Well, part of the challenge then, when you quit early like that, it's you start to lose a lot of a lot of surrounding benefits with chiropractic care. Like, we see it all the time. Like, if we start to feel under the weather, how quickly do we bounce back? I mean, within 24 hours, 36 if it's a tough, flu, it's like we're bouncing back. And again, I'm not, super young anymore. Like, I don't consider myself midlife yet, because if I live healthfully to, 100 or whatever, but like, there's so many people that it's just like illness hits them hard. Whether whatever virus or bacteria is going around, sinus cold and upper respiratory cold, and it hits them really hard, and it doesn't just last for a day or two. It lasts for a month or two in some cases. Sometimes 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes it's a month or two, and it's like they just had these lingering issues from the initial viral attack, and when your body is fighting that hard for that long to get over an illness, that's a sign that your immune system is very, very compromised. And so, and then again, the people would ask, well, what the heck does chiropractic have to do with that, right? And it's like, we're trying to fine tune your nervous system. So it's like, if you come in and we fine tune your nervous system, like fine tuning a radio, well, you go out and travel and use your body, right? So if we fine tune your radio and then you take it in your car and you start driving around, well, you start to maybe lose a little bit of reception because of the topography. You got your up and down hills, you're on roads, especially this time of year, massive potholes, and you're bouncing around. And so the radio can actually kind of get shifted off of its, off kilter, off of its, fine tuning with the station that it's trying to communicate with. Well, the same idea with your nervous system. Like, you come in, you get adjusted. We're trying to fine tune everything so that the body is communicating at its best. And again, when that spine is moving in a line, we are literally fine tuning your nervous system. And then you leave, and then you're constantly fighting gravity, right? Gravity is pulling down on us all the time. You have slips and falls. I mean, especially now we're looking at the ice out there, and it's, people are going to have those little stumbles, on the ice and kind of catch themselves. You sleep funny with your head, cocked to the side. You're picking your kids up, trying to get them in and out of the car. You're shoveling. Whatever the case may be, but you're using your body. And so, the body is constantly fighting those stressors that's trying to break it down, right? And, we have the internal reorganization, right? That takes inanimate matter, the dead matter. We always mention, like, this table is 95+%, 99% the same as us, right? In terms of, you break it down to carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, organic chemistry is very much a part of who we are. So if you break it down into the elements, we're probably 99% the same as this table. But this table is not alive. We are taking the same carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and making the building blocks of proteins, and not only breaking down old proteins, but building up new proteins, because there's an intelligence in our system that makes us alive. And so we're constantly battling that, right? We're battling the world, which is breaking down, the matter that makes us up. And then our internal intelligence is trying to take that inanimate matter and turn it into living, breathing clay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good representation too. And that's where I think you can fall into the consistency care is, like you said, we're adaptable humans. So it's not like we adjust you once and then that form of you stays.
Yeah.
It's car accidents or lifting wrong or sleeping wrong, like you said. It's never going process. It'll be the same as like not updating your computer. Like they have software updates for a reason. The nervous system is just like a computer. It needs its updates as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a great point, Doc, about your body is different, and hopefully, again, if we're fine tuning things and adjusting things, it's like you go out, you live your life, and then you come back in, and hopefully you are a different person. I always use the saying, like, every adjustment builds on the next, right? Yeah. So you're, like you said, you're downloading, you're plugging in, you're resetting, you're upgrading, a newer model every time you come in. Yeah. And it's not that the adjustment's different, it's that you're different when you come in. Just like people, talk about, reading the scriptures, right? It's like, well, Christians have been reading the same scriptures for 2,000 years. And yet every time you read them, if you go through them in a year or 3 years, whatever the case may be, but, every time you read a scripture, the scripture doesn't change. You change. You're different. And so same idea, like when you come to show up, whether it's, for functional training or a massage or, your chiropractic care, it's like, you are a different person every day you wake up, and so by doing that consistency care, that same adjustment might hit you a little bit differently. Yeah. It might, your body might adapt a little bit differently, and hopefully, again, getting better exponentially, with time and repetition as that goes through. So you're better able to then adapt to life. So again, that's the simplest definition of health that we use in the office all the time, right? Adaptation. Yeah. So that consistency care is, I think sometimes gets lost in the shuffle. The idea that, okay, I'm coming in because I'm in pain, but now my pain is hopefully significantly improved upon, and my body's getting stronger, but the idea that we can continue, with our adjustments and our fine tuning or our checking in, because then we build that strength and stability, for facilitation and adaptation for the next big event that, our body comes.
Yes. I think, I was just kind of thinking like you're in consistency either way, consistency in care, or if, you're not under the certain, corrective consistency, you're going to consistently be in pain or functioning at suboptimal levels. So if it were my choice, I'd be under consistent care. So that way, you are firing, feeling like a 100% human, not just getting through the day because of a pain or a condition.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, we have the tools to be able to check whether or not an adjustment is necessary that day, right? Just like you go to, you hopefully go to a good mechanic and they can, plug in the computer of the car and they can say, you said your car was, getting checked out right now, right? Yeah. So it's like, you're taking it in, annual inspection, like, they're going to plug in, they're going to look at different things, and they have tools to be able to test whether or not things are running correctly. And whether or not you need anything done. And same thing, when people come in, like we have assessments to be able to determine if an adjustment is needed, and maybe even what kind of adjustment is needed, whether it needs to be a little bit more, forceful to, really get things moving, or no, everything's moving fairly well, but, there's some, asymmetries here from a, neuromuscular perspective. So we want to do more of a soft, prolonged, sustained adjustment, to be able to help your body facilitate and adapt better. So, so we have the tools and mechanisms to be able to help with that, so that when we do have people who are not symptomatic, right? People who have come in for a condition and they're feeling better, or the, people who bring their kids in, right? I mean, how many times your daughter gets checked, right? I checked my godson the other day, who's not even 2 years old yet. It's like, they're coming in and they don't necessarily have any symptoms that are showing up, but we have tools to be able to show like, okay, there's something that could be here, from a stressful nervous system or spine perspective that we can get corrected now before a problem ever even exposes itself. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the idea that, once I go to a chiropractor, I have to go the rest of my life. Well, no, you get to choose and do whatever you want with your health and well-being. I think the importance is when you see something that works so well, okay, talk about the ingredients of health, right? You've got to move the body. And that comes through you moving the body through exercise and then making sure your spine is aligned and moving well. You've got to have, the right building blocks, the right ingredients. You've got to have good, healthy fats, good, healthy proteins, good, healthy carbohydrates. Like you have to have those ingredients. You have to have all the right trace minerals, your calciums, magnesiums, all of those antioxidants, all of those have to be part of a good, healthy diet or supplement regimen. You've got to have, good, healthy, thoughts in terms of, how you are perceiving the world and how you're responding to the world that is, coming against you. And so it's like those are the building blocks. And you got to have a good, healthy sleep, right? So it's like, those are the building blocks of health and well-being. And so once you understand the ingredients of a good, healthy individual, a good, healthy organism, a good, healthy, member of a family. Like once you understand that, then it becomes easier to start tapping into that and doing it on a consistent basis. And again, there are options, right? You can consistently take a medication for the rest of your life. Again, in the past, probably, 15 years, I've taken one round of antibiotics when my Lyme flared up. And again, it worked because my body, is not, was not adapted to, antibiotics. Like that's a lot of times you've got these viruses and bacteria especially, that have constantly adapted to the overuse of antibiotics for years and years and years, and people are not adapting to them and they're not working anymore in a lot of cases. So, when you have a body that has not had a medication, and it's very highly adaptive, well, then when you actually have a significant illness, then that medication can do what it's designed to do and really make it work. So, the consistency, health is not, it's simple, right? Health is simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
So, making those decisions to, show up consistently, and even if it's just finding a good healthcare provider that like and trust, and can have those conversations of, hey, I'm dealing with this right now. Is there anything that I need to adjust, fine tune, tweak in my life? To help improve that adaptation and that health and well-being. So, hopefully you're going to a dentist consistently. Hopefully you're checking in with a primary care consistently. Hopefully you're getting your car checked out consistently, because that's legally.
Yeah, that's true.
Paying your taxes, all these things that we do consistently, even though we might bemoan some of them, they're active practices of, healthy living, both from an individual, familial, and, communal perspective. So, when you start to understand that consistency concept, I challenge you to figure out what areas might you be able to improve upon from a consistency basis. So, anything else you want to add?
No, I think that was good.
All right. So, consistency, that's the theme of today's podcast. Again, I challenge you to go figure out, where in your life maybe you're lacking consistency, or, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, where is consistency just kind of, taken over because you haven't made a conscious choice, right? So, you can have bad habits or, routines that show up because you're not actively making a conscious choice in them. So something has just then routinely kind of dictated your life pattern that could be hindering your health and well-being. So, something as simple as like scrolling on a, cell phone. I'm speaking from personal experience. Sometimes, we get caught up in the cold and in we get into these habitual routines that are not necessarily healthy. So
easy.
Healthy. So where are you maybe just, floating downstream and just going with the flow versus where could you improve upon making some conscious effort to, make some changes in your consistency, to build those healthy routines that's just going to help your life long term. So I am Dr. Dan here with the What the Health podcast with
Dr. Riley.
Thank you all for stopping by. We'll see you at the next one.
You've been listening to another episode of What the Health? The podcast where anything health is fair game with your hosts, Dr. Dan, Angela, and Dr. Riley. Brought to you by Chiro Family Chiropractic. If you'd like to learn more about some of the resources mentioned on this show, or you have questions about something that was discussed, please reach out through our website at www.chirofamilychiropractic.com. Remember to like and subscribe to What the Health Podcast to catch all the latest episodes and replay your favorites. Thank you for listening, and remember, we're always here to help when you find yourself saying, "What the hell?"